Hello, and welcome to our 21st D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. Today we're going to be looking at the Crimson Scourge Prestige class from the Cityscape supplement. I'm going to be going through the Prestige class's prerequisites, its various class features, and rating it overall on its concept and execution. The Crimson Scourge is a relentless tracker and bounty hunter who specializes in finding their quarry and subduing them non-lethally. Quite similar to the Bloodhound Prestige class from Complete Adventure, or the Justiciar Prestige class. It's important to keep in mind that this sort of Prestige class is geared toward a particular type of character and a particular type of campaign, as are many of the Prestige class's feats and other character options in Cityscape. It says that Crimson Scourges hail almost exclusively from the ranks of barbarians, fighters, and rangers, and that druids can qualify almost as quickly, but they tend to be ideologically opposed to the methods and goals of the Crimson Scourge. To become a Crimson Scourge, your alignment must be any non-good. Your base attack bonus must be +4 or higher. You need a base fortitude save of +3 or better. And for skills, you need 4 ranks in Gather Information, 8 ranks in Handle Animal, 1 rank in Heal, and 3 ranks in Intimidate. Lastly, you'll need the Urban Tracking feat, which is included in this book, as well as an Unearthed Arcana, and Races of Destiny as well. Setting aside the rather strange Handle Animal skill rank requirement and the odd implications it might have, this does, as the description says, mostly restrict early entry to this class for fighters, barbarians, and rangers. Unlike the Justiciar Prestige class, this one is completely not open to paladins, at least the default paladin. Overall, I'd rate this Prestige class's requirements as mildly restrictive. While it only requires 1 feat, and if you choose to play an Urban Ranger variant, that's a feat you're going to get for free, the varying skill ranks that it requires are going to force you to make at least a few cross-class choices. The Crimson Scourge gives you full base attack bonus and a D10 hit die. It also gives you a good fortitude and reflex save, so similar to a hybrid fighter ranger, or if you play Pathfinder, pretty much the same as a ranger. You get 6+ intelligence modifier skill points per level, and a fairly good skill list, including survival, gather information, the stealth and perception skills, sense motive, and so on. While this isn't a selling point on its own, it does at least mean that rangers entering this prestige class will get to continue progressing in the skills they're already putting ranks into. As for class features, at level 1, you gain proficiency with 1 weapon for free, either bolas, net, or whip. You also get the Kid Gloves feature, which allows you to use a weapon that deals non-lethal damage to deal lethal damage, or a weapon that deals lethal damage to do non-lethal damage, without taking the usual -4 penalty on the attack roll. This is a good feature for the class's advertised function, but generally speaking, a lot of monsters are going to be immune to non-lethal damage, and oftentimes you're only going to be wanting to deal non-lethal damage if you're trying to capture them anyway, and a lot of the time in D&D campaigns, that's simply not going to be that important. This does allow you to use a whip to deal lethal damage, and thus use it as an actual combat weapon. It doesn't let you threaten squares, but it does have 15 feet of reach, which is somewhat useful for fighting from the back ranks perhaps, but the D4 damage and the issues it has with armor do not make it an ideal melee weapon. Also at level 1, you gain the Special Dispensation feature. This gives you the Special Dispensation feat as a bonus feat. This is a feat from Cityscape that doesn't really have any hard mechanical features, but it does allow you to bypass weapon and armor legal restrictions in cities. You effectively have a special badge or other signet of your station that allows you to ignore these laws. This is useful in the context of a city campaign where such laws exist, but quite often they either don't, or and again, this is a class that is expected to be used in a city campaign, but if you're outside of a city or not in an area or a city where weapons are restricted, it's simply not going to have any sort of benefit for you. So far, this prestige class has an interesting, if not particularly strong level 1 feature, and one that is only useful in particular situations. Gaining a free weapon proficiency with an exotic weapon can be nice, but it's not going to really make up for the requirements that it takes to get into this prestige class so far. At level 2, you gain the Swift Tracker feature. This is a pretty standard one, although it does work with urban tracking in particular. You can make a Gather Information check when using urban tracking every half hour, without taking the usual -5 penalty. This allows you to help pick up the trail of a quarry that has slipped your grasp for the time being, and this can be helpful when you're tracking someone who's fleeing and perhaps mere minutes count for preventing them from escaping. But again, this is situational, and while this prestige class is geared toward those particular situations, this by itself is not a great second level. At level 3, you gain the Painful Strike feature. This allows you to do an extra 1d6 points of non-lethal damage when making a melee attack that deals non-lethal damage against an unarmed opponent. This does work against opponents that are using improved unarmed strike, but it doesn't really say what happens with natural attacks. It does, of course, mention that there are many creatures that are immune to non-lethal damage, which is a limiting factor by itself, but the fact that this has to be against an unarmed target really strongly limits it. This is a sort of pseudo-sneak attack type of ability that only applies to non-lethal damage, and it does scale up. At level 6, you're going to get an extra 2d6 damage, and at level 9, you'll get an extra 3d6 damage. Again, however, the requirement for your target to be unarmed really sinks this feature. Some features that come later will kind of help complement this and help you build up to it, but the bonus damage by that point is going to be lost by the setup that you're going to need to do by disarming your opponent, even with improved disarm, which you will get at level 5. At 4th level, you gain the Immovable Heart class feature, representing your callous and uncaring nature, perhaps, as a relentless bounty hunter. You get a +2 competence bonus to resist enchantment spells and fear effects, which are going to be among the more annoying effects that you can suffer that will force you to make a will save. This is a useful feature, and sadly it might be one of the best ones of this prestige class. That said, if you wanted to gain that kind of bonus, you could simply take Iron Will. At 5th level, you gain Improved Disarm as a bonus feat, even if you do not meet the prerequisites. This is going to help you set up to use your Painful Strike feature, but it's going to require you to give up at least one attack, if not more, in order to disarm your opponent. And unless you're using a two-handed weapon, there's a good chance you're going to be at a significant penalty. If this feature allowed you to make a disarm attempt as a rider effect on top of a normal melee attack of some kind, then it would be a lot better. It still might not be enough to save this prestige class's concept mechanically, but it would at least be an improvement. Getting this as a bonus feat is nice, and it technically isn't a negative, but it's really not going to make the concept here very viable. At level 7, you gain the Threaten feature. This allows you to use Intimidate to demoralize an opponent as a move action rather than a standard action, and when you do so, it keeps your target shaken for a number of rounds equal to your unmodified strength modifier. It's a bit strange that it specifies that, as that means it's saying that probably you can't include any benefits to your strength from a belt, or potion, or bull strength being cast directly on you, or anything of that sort. It's likely the strength bonuses from Rage were also on the minds of the writer of this prestige class. Lastly, you gain a +2 bonus on any Intimidate check made to demoralize an opponent, which could help push you over the edge in some cases, especially if you're working with a relatively low charisma. Here, the bias towards a fighter, ranger, or barbarian, all classes that are not likely to have a high charisma score, does hurt this feature a bit more, and the fact that paladins can't take levels in this prestige class does even more to diminish it. At level 8, you gain Deadened Hide. This makes you immune to non-lethal damage, and to spells and effects that inflict or manipulate pain. It says here, parenthesis, DM's discretion. I would assume that Symbol of Pain would be an obvious one for this. As for other effects like perhaps Rack and Whelm and similar spells, this will help you protect against those, but it is very situational, and this feature almost might as well not exist in some ways. It is quite flavorful, but the fact that it's the only thing you get at 8th level really makes it pretty much a dead level for this prestige class. Finally, at level 10, you gain the Smell of Blood feature. You gain an almost animalistic awareness of the world around you. This gives you the Scent ability, and a +3 insight bonus on initiative checks. The bonus on initiative checks is excellent, as initiative bonuses are always great, and an insight bonus most of all. The Scent ability is going to be useful for dealing with invisible opponents or the like. For a capstone ability, though, something that you spent 10 long levels getting to, and gave up many other class features potentially to get, this really is not going to work out very well for you. You simply could have taken improved initiative with your fighter bonus feat. As for gaining scent, there are other ways to do it if you'd like, but even if there weren't, it really would not be worth going through 10 levels of this prestige class to do so. The example character for this prestige class is Gedrick the Whip, a human Ranger 5 Crimson Scourge 4. He's using +2 studded leather armor and a +1 flaming whip, which helps him get at least a little bit more damage out of such a mediocre weapon. And for a challenge rating 9 character, dealing 1d3 + 3 lethal or non-lethal damage, plus a d6 of fire, really is not going to cut the mustard in most encounters. Even using a light mace in the offhand, it's really not going to be enough. It's an unfortunate byproduct of the 3.5 mechanics, the way that they're structured, but a character wielding a greatsword with a high strength and simply dealing with the -4 penalty to hit for dealing non-lethal damage would be much more effective at non-lethally subduing an opponent than this character would. That said, if you are going to go into this prestige class, it's probably best to grab level 1 and nothing else. The Justiciar from Complete Warrior, though, has an identical level 1 ability, and its version of Painful Strike works when you are flanking or whenever you've denied your target its dexterity bonus to armor class. So, effectively like Sneak Attack. Unfortunately, this prestige class is outclassed, no pun intended, by the Justiciar and Bloodhound, two other prestige classes that fulfill the same niche that it does, without really having any of its drawbacks or downsides. While I can't speak too much on the effectiveness of the Justiciar or Bloodhound, though they might be the subject of a future prestige class review, it is pretty clear that they are superior to this one in quite a lot of ways, and it really makes it difficult to justify taking any levels of this one if those are available. Setting aside the fact that in many cases, subduing your opponents non-lethally just isn't a strong enough or important enough option to justify sinking levels in a prestige class into it, the Crimson Scourge has a wide variety of disparate abilities that really don't contribute to a cohesive whole, and as a result, playing one leaves you as a jack of several trades, master of none, and that's really not what you're going to want to be doing with your character. Overall, I would give this prestige class 5 stars for concept and 2 stars for execution, and outside of a city campaign, or another one specifically geared to a non-lethal bounty hunter character, I would give it 1 star for execution. There's simply no reason to take this for a regular fighter, barbarian, ranger, or really any other type of character. If your campaign centers around chasing down a renegade band of monks, then this perhaps could be a decent option, but otherwise it's simply going to be holding back your character. Which unfortunately means that this is a good idea for a prestige class that is simply badly executed. So that's about it for this prestige class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.